Yeehaw, everybody! Welcome back. My name is Becky and I like to read. I once was a cowgirl, so I couldn't help myself. This has got to be one of my least favorite hats. I love the look of it. I love the originality of it. But wearing it is a pain in the ass because it's like too big for my head and it's too big in general. So it fits with the theme of this video, which are my top 5 worst books of this year. They were all pretty awful in my opinion, so I think I'm going to share them with you in like least popular to most popular so I can get the most hate at the end of the video. I've mentioned this in one of my other videos, but one of the worst books that I read this year, and it was more like a bundle of books, were books 4 through the whatever of the Maximum Ride series by James Patterson. I really enjoyed books 1 through 3 upon my reread. I had the 2 most recent books on my TBR shelf, so I figured I would just reread the whole series and then continue on. But books 4 through whatever were god fucking awful. They just got progressively worse. By the end of it, I was ranting to my sister about all the things that were wrong with it, that I hated about it, that didn't make sense about it. So while I recommend books 1 through 3 for especially younger teens, I do not recommend books 4 through whatever, especially if you're reading them as an adult now. I do not recommend. Don't do it. Don't waste your time. The next book that was, oh my god, awful is The Stars We Steal. Can't remember the author. Didn't keep the book. I don't keep books I don't like. But I ended up with this book because it was on my Amazon wish list. And at the beginning of the year, I went on like this 6-month-long book buying ban where I read every book on my TBR shelf. Like all of my physical books. I read them all. I forced myself to do it and I accomplished it. And so I was like, hey, if anybody wants to help me restock my TBR shelf, here's books off my wish list, whatever. And thank you so much to everybody who sent me books to restock my shelf. I so appreciate it. That is so kind of you, and I appreciate them all, even if they end up being stinkers like this one did. The reason it was on my wish list was because I liked the cover and I liked the title. I like titles with the word star in it. And I didn't read the synopsis. So my sister, I love you, I do, thank you. She kindly sent this to me. I managed to convince my friend Kim, who has a Booktube channel, by the way, I will link her down below. I managed to convince her to read this book with me. I'm so sorry, Kim. I'm so sorry. Teen Bachelorette in Space. I don't like space books. I hate reality TV, and I especially think The Bachelorette is trash. I don't even find it entertaining trash. I just find it trash. But because I convinced Kim, I'm so sorry, Kim, again, because I convinced her to spend money on this book and read it with me, I pushed through it. It was so awful. We were both hate reading it like 2 chapters in. We were just reading it just to hate on it. It was so bad. The next book is a classic. I don't like classics. Can never get into them. I find them really boring. I lean more toward dialogue than description. Like, I like a good balance, but if it's overly descriptive and not enough dialogue, I can't. And that's what I find most classics tend to be like. So I read 1984. It was one of those books that was on my shelf, so I made myself read it. Like, it's a dystopian. I figured if I could get into a classic, that would be it. I hated it. I gave it 2 stars. The guy character, he was just annoying. I really can't remember all that much about it because once I read it and I hated it and I talked about it in my wrap-up, I was like, oh, I'm done with that book. So a lot of the information has left my brain, thank God. I didn't like the world, really. I didn't like the characters. I didn't like the ending. I didn't like it. That's what I'm saying. It was crap. So if you like classics, I'm sure you'll love this book. Me, I mean, do you see what I read? I'm over here giving ACOTAR 5 stars. I'm not gonna like 1984. The next book, sadly, was such a disappointment for me, and that is Witches Steeped in Gold by Shannon Smart. I was really hyped about this book. I love witches. And I read it for the Diversathon prompt, a book set in Jamaica, because it involves Jamaican witches, which sounded so freaking cool. Cover is gorgeous. I think my biggest problem with this book was that it was so boring. There was so much like backstabbing in it. They didn't seem witchy enough. I just didn't get that witchy vibe that I was looking for from this book. It was just boring, and I was disappointed with it. Redundancy, but whatever. And the final book, which is probably one of the most popular books of this year if you're a YA reader, Kingdom of the Cursed? Wicked? The first book. I hated this so much. I went into this because it was so hyped. People said it was a great enemies to lovers. They said it was historical inspired. Everybody was just hyping it up so much, and I liked the cover. But what I got was not anything anybody told me. It is not enemies to lovers, and I do not care what people say. They might be enemies to lovers in like book 2. Amelia and Wrath, I remember their names because I just read it recently. They didn't have really any animosity towards each other other than what like they had been told. Like, ooh, you shouldn't like that person, and ooh, you shouldn't like that person. So that's really all they had to go on. They didn't really have any like personal agendas with each other. And for being enemies, they sure did help each other a lot. Like, he was constantly saving her, she was constantly saving them. I know they were connected in some way, but I don't care. They were constantly working together. That is not enemies. Also, lovers? Where? There was no lovers in this book. Like, did they even kiss? They might have kissed once. Ooh, lovers. I've heard people say it gets more steamy in book 2. Well, great. I'm not going to read book 2 because I hated book 1 so damn much. The historical inspired. I love historical inspired books. Hello, I did a video on my favorite historicals because I read historic inspired books so much. About the only thing that I got a sense of historic inspired was the fact that they were witches and like the church versus the witch thing. But you could set that in any fantasy world and it would not be historic. Nothing else about this book screamed, I'm in the past. No, it felt very much like a fantasy book set in a fantasy world. Like, the way they spoke and things like that never gave me a sense of history. It was so boring. There was a scene with a snake that I really liked. It wasn't boring. But other than that, the rest of the book, I was like, oh my God, is something going to happen? There's no chemistry between these characters. There's nothing happening. I'm bored. Did not give me what people said it would give me. They lied to me. I really liked the map that is on the inside cover. This one was so pretty. I loved the colors. I loved the details. It was the 7 circles of hell, which is where Wrath is from. This book didn't even take place in hell. So why is there a map of hell? There should have been a map of her village so I could see like where her family's restaurant was and where like her sister got murdered and things like that. Should have been the map, not a map of a setting that wasn't even in the book. I know they go to hell in the second book. I know that much. But that would make sense if you put a map of hell in the second book because they're actually there. This book just... it was way too overhyped in my opinion. Y'all speak in a different language when you talk about the hype of this book because I don't understand it, which wouldn't be difficult because I only speak one language. What are you talking about? So those were my top 5 worst books of the year. I do not recommend them. Don't waste your money. But if you like them, you like them. Different strokes for different folks and all that jazz, you know. So thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you think down below. Even if you disagree with me, I'm fine with it. Let me know. And until my next video where I will be much more positive and share books that I actually like, I will talk to you later and read something great for me.